Vinyl finally managed to dislodge the treacherous treat from her trachea with a fit of heaving coughs, aided by Bonbon's frantic hoof patting her back to help her along. She had to admit, she was glad the cupcake had been ejected before some pony started the hoof-lick maneuver on her. Her normally porcelain-white face was blushing with a similar shade of her eyes, and her heart was fighting against her ribcage as if it wanted to escape before the whole respiration thing got a little ugly.
Sorry. Cupcakes. Nasty.
Bonbon leaned back from her vigorous back patting, glancing at the tray before setting it out of both of their reaches.
No problem at all. Sorry if I shocked you.
Her breathing had improved, but the blush only increased.
Shocked? I'm not shocked. I'm cool with with being with mares and all. It's okay. Just that, yeah, I didn't know you could actually marry another mare.
Bonbon giggled into her hoof, her beige cheeks lighting up slightly. She was especially quick to blush.
Oh, it isn't officially, but me and Lyra don't care all that much. We have each other and our vows. That's all that matters. It's a new lunar law that's coming in, though Celestia's against it for the time being. I'm surprised you and Octavia hadn't heard about it.
What makes you think me and Octavia would have heard about it? We're not fussed with being with mares. Not that there's anything wrong with it.
Oh, sorry. I just thought you two were...
Bonbon let the sentence hang, allowing Vinyl to work out the implications. Sadly, Vinyl's increased cardinal blood flow hadn't helped her uptake on the matter any further.
We were what?
Bonbon felt either Vinyl was a master poker player, or simply not a clever pony.
You know, together.
In the absence of another cupcake to make an attempt on her life, Vinyl found the air itself attempting to throttle her. The episode was much shorter this time, only a few surprised coughs and another apology. She waved a hoof at Bonbon, chuckling lightly.
Me and Octavia aren't like that, Bonbon. We're just not really friends.
So if you don't like each other, why are you still hanging around each other? And why is it that even when Octavia leaves you to prepare for her set, you stand by the buffet and watch her?
What? I wasn't. I was watching her argue. It's funny.
Bonbon smiled, an infuriatingly benevolent smile that practically sang, "I know exactly what you're thinking." She turned and gazed out at the stage, not really focusing on the pianist currently playing, simply staring up and away from him.
It's not my business to pry. You can stay in the stable as long as you want. I know it took months for me and Lyra to tell any pony.
She returned her gaze to Vinyl, who she could tell was simmering in an awkward stew of emotions and thoughts.
But when we did tell our friends and parents, they were much more supportive than we expected. Pity Lyra's agent wasn't so accepting.
Vinyl opened her mouth to respond, but all that came out was a low, baritone sound. Bonbon smiled. She could read this mare like a book. A book that had been scribbled over by school filly, but just as legible nonetheless.
Don't worry, Vinyl. Your filly friend's up next.
Bonbon had to admit, the little scrunched face Vinyl made when she realized she was being teased was fairly adorable. She hoped that this mare might prompt Octavia to pull a stick out of her rump, though the thought of that reminded her of a night when her and Lyra had gotten steaming drunk and... The rattling of hooves on the floor snapped her out of her memories as the pianist left the stage. An elderly pony rose from the midst of the judging panel, and the pianist bowed as low as equine anatomy would allow, before silently making his way off stage. Bonbon remembered Lyra gushing about the pony being some sort of musical genius and the like. However, his name had slipped her memory. Lyra was always the musician anyway, so Bonbon had often sat and watched her little tirades and rants on the business. There was something so enchanting about the passion in her eyes as she did so. The old pony waved at a small, plump colt waiting at the wings.
Do bring the next candidate through, Usher.
The colt nodded, making his swift but composed way towards the candidate's waiting room. He returned in mere seconds with Octavia in tow, her cello carried carefully in her forelegs. She set up the piece, once more unifying herself with the instrument in their mutual balancing act. She took a deep breath, the first of several, and looked up at her idol, her inspiration, her judge.
Miss Octavia Philharmonic II, I presume.
Yes, sir.
Octavia swore she heard laughter from the audience, but couldn't get a line of sight at the source.
And your instrument is a double bass?
A custom piece, sir. Closer to a cello, but with bass-like elements.
Indeed. Very well, Miss Philharmonica.
The phantom howl of the laughter once more resumed.
I've heard much talk, but very little play about yourself. I hope you can justify the lavish praise I've been hearing.
Octavia nodded, spacing her hooves, breathing deeply. The balance perfected to the weight of a tail hair, and she began. Her eyes didn't register or focus. Her entire mind and heart poured into the song. A song she had composed recently. Not the usual, somber, emotional pieces she was famed for, no. Something struck her one night to write something happier, a jovial, heartwarming beat. She supposed it was the fact that she was performing for the gala, but that being the case, why were her supposedly unfocused, undirected eyes listing lazily towards a pair of crimson jewels in the audience? She played on, the qualms in her mind the most timid whisper, the faintest distraction like a breeze on a Manhattan skyscraper. Her bow scissored across the strings, fervently striking each note with most delicate timing. Part of the reason she often played slower pieces was also a handicap she was born with. The awkward manner she held the bow made active ankle and hoof movements at high speed both difficult and slightly painful. She held it well tonight, surrounding and corralling the thoughts of her discomfort to the murky edges of her mind. She was simply an extension of the instrument, a vessel for its will to be played. The piece extended on. She even braved some spiccato, considered somewhat amateurish by the high society, but she felt such erratic play could complement the feel of the piece. After a short time, she pulled in the instrument for a light crescendo, ending on a high note as she raised her bow in triumph, bowing to her audience while maintaining her precarious grip on the cello. There were murmurs amongst the audience before Mr. Zimmer rose once more.
Of the stringed instruments we have seen before, Hoofz, we have no doubt yours is the most elegantly played piece, especially given the light, almost fiddle-like manner of play. It must be asked, what inspired this piece?
Octavia gazed out to the audience, two little rubies staring back at her.
I'm not sure, sir. I just felt it was appropriate.
More appropriate than requested, Miss Philharmonica. You may take your leave and rest. We will see the last candidate now.
Vinyl turned to Bonbon, who was wearing the most irritatingly invasive grin she had ever seen.
What? You happy because your wifey's coming on stage then?
Bonbon chuckled, turning towards the stage as the mint green unicorn made her way onto it, Lyra levitating beside her.
Oh no, just something amusing I noticed.
What? There's not something in my mane, is there?
Bonbon shook her head before looking towards the little gray pony leaving the stage.
15-minute classical orchestral piece and you never once took your eyes off her.
To say Vinyl found the hanging silence left in the wake of Bonbon's words awkward was an understatement. She was more than glad when Bonbon diverted her attention back towards Lyra's performance, leaving Vinyl to her red-cheeked, confused self. She supposed it would be best to keep a pretense of enjoying the show, even if only to stop Bonbon asking more questions of her. The little green unicorn stood on her hind legs, holding the lyre in her forelegs. Strange that a unicorn would want to play by hoof, not by horn. Her piqued curiosity held her attention right up until Octavia poked her in the shoulder.
Hey, why are you here? You're meant to be in the backstage bit.
Octavia idly twiddled her hooves, staring at the floor.
Well, I was just wondering if you wanted to come back there and wait with me.
Vinyl's eyebrows disappeared into her mane.
They refilled the buffet, if you'd like some more.
Sure, I'll just come with you now then.
Vinyl rose from her seat and noticed the most fleeting of smiles as Octavia led her along. She glanced back at Bonbon, who was wearing that smile.
Have fun, you two. Hope I've given you something to think about, Vinyl.
She shot off a small wink before returning her eyes back to Lyra, who was wrapping up her set.
What did she mean by that, Vinyl? Are you two best friends all of a sudden?
Octavia barely held back the forcefulness in her voice, surprising both herself and Vinyl.
Hey, what's up with you? I was just talking. Can't I talk to another mare?
Octavia blushed before turning her face sharply away as she felt the heat rise on her cheeks.
Well, of course you can. No reason you couldn't. Just that Oh, let's just...
Vinyl sped up her pace to overtake Octavia, moving in front of her and craning her head around to see Octavia's face. All Octavia saw was her gleeful grin rising from the side like the moon.
You're blushing.
I am not!
Octavia jerked her head the other way, even turning herself slightly out of Vinyl's view. Vinyl took the opportunity, skirting around to look at her face again, grinning like a Cheshire cat.
You are, Octi. Look, your cheeks.
She swirled back around, prompting Vinyl to start giggling. She overtook again, seeing Octavia herself giggling quietly as she turned away once more. Vinyl put an insistent hoof under her chin, gently but forcefully bringing her face into full view.
Blushing and giggling like a school filly. So much for a refined aristocrat, Octavia.
Octavia's normally gray face was rivaling her bow tie.
Oh, and you simply enjoy living life au naturel, don't you?
Sure, I eat Mexicolton now and then. What's wrong with that?
Octavia burst out laughing, not a condescending chuckle nor a haughty giggle, but a genuine laugh.
Oh, Vinyl, you really are a silly filly.
Only one of me in Equestria.
Octavia calmed herself, turning back to Vinyl from her laughing fit.
So, is it some sort of luck that I found you then?
Vinyl chuckled, her own cheeks burning like the sun.
I suppose. You're a very lucky filly to have met such a rare and awesome mare like me.
Oh, I'm the filly? I think you'll find that I'm the mare here.
Octavia poked a playful hoof at Vinyl's cheeks, feeling the soft warmth emanating from them. She returned her hoof to the point, lightly stroking it, enjoying the tiny pulsing of Vinyl's heartbeat, miniaturized and multiplied by 1,000, like a lone trumpeter expanded into a glorious orchestra. A slight cough interrupted her trance, and the pair turned to see Bonbon smiling, head tilted and eyes sparkling.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Just reminded me about when Lyra and I first met.
She trotted casually past the pair, exhaling a soft sigh as she disappeared into the doorway. A slightly awkward moment descended, the spell that had hung by the thread between their eyes snapped like spider silk.
So, shall we,
Yeah, let's, the buffet. I'm kind of hungry.
The awkward silence persisted, and was only magnified when the pair entered, and saw Lyra and Bonbon sitting in the corner. Both turned to see them enter, offering jovial grins and a hooves up each.
Should we go talk to...
Not in this life, Vinyl.
Octavia wandered off to grab a glass of something to wet her throat. Her breathing had become frantic just now, drying her throat almost completely. Even her heart had yet to slow down. It was nerves from the audition. Yes, just nerves. Nothing alcoholic was available, a pity, as it would have dulled her nerves nicely. Orange juice glinted from a glass jug before her. It would do nicely. She noticed Vinyl beside her, carefully pouring herself a glass of cranberry juice. Her heart rate raced ahead once more at the sight. What was this? She turned back, away from Vinyl, slugging another glass of sharp citrus goodness. The plump pony, Usher if she remembered the name correctly, entered. The whole room quieted down, conversations nipped at the bud.
If you will please, we will be having the pianists first. With me, sirs and madams.
The portly colt exited with a quarter of the room in tow. Some had left friends behind who nervously tapped their hooves together, awaiting either the joyous or disappointed return. Next, the brass were taken away, the room empty to Octavia and Vinyl, Lyra and Bonbon, and a hoofful of other string instrumentalists. Octavia tried her best to avoid looking at Vinyl for the sake of her pattering heart, and at Lyra for the sake of her sanity. Inevitably, this meant staring down at the tabletop she was leaning on. This persisted for a long moment, but Octavia was oblivious as she fought to understand the processes of her own mind and feelings. After an indeterminable amount of time, Usher once more entered the room, same perfect-cut composure as before.
String instruments next, please. Mr. Zimmer is very eager about the candidates.
Octavia turned to leave the room, stopping as she heard Vinyl call after her.
Hey, Octi. Good luck.
Octavia turned back, nodding and smiling as she left Vinyl standing by the hors d'oeuvres. She joined the group filing through the narrow corridor, and fate had placed her right beside the glowering Lyra.
Well, Octavia, I see hypocrisy is still your element. Daring to insult my wife, yet grabbing onto a ragtag vandal like that filly.
Anger burnt into Octavia's chest. She bore down on Lyra, who barely flinched.
Don't you dare say anything about her. I am not with her.
Lyra simply patted Octavia on the head like one would a small filly.
See, it hurts to hear some ponies say stuff like that, doesn't it? Now, Octavia, behold, as the esteemed Mr. Zimmer selects only the true talent from this crop. I'll see you in the audience, or in the dumpsters.
On the contrary, I believe you'll be spending the night of the gala busking for bits on the street.
Oh, those are some strong words, Octavia. We'll see.
They emerged onto the stage, lined up before the judges like a batch of freshly baked pies awaiting inspection. Hoofz Zimmer stood, moving down the line one by one, explaining failings, offering improvements, sadly sending them off one by one. Only now did Octavia understand why the previous groups had taken so long. He didn't simply strike a pony off for one failing. What was a reject this year could be a star the next, and he knew it. Ponies left with a hopeful smile on their muzzles. This year might not have been the one, but next year may well be. Eventually it boiled down to just Octavia and Lyra, as both had been silently fearing. He stood before them both, smiling benevolently.
Now both of you displayed exceptional talent beyond expectations. Miss HannahK, your deployment of the cello subverts any criticisms I have leveled against Earth's ponies, and you have allowed me to view such musicians with new eyes. Miss Lyra, your lyre work is a return to a previous form, and I am glad you have regained your previous excellence after your encounter with the media.
He cleared his throat, dusting himself off slightly.
However, this presented us with most difficult problem. Both of you are talented, and were you pianist or bass instrumentalist, there would have been much more argument between myself and the other judges. Thankfully, in the string section, we have space for 2 candidates. Our problem easily solved. I would like to congratulate you both on achieving these places. We will contact you within the week for your first rehearsal dates.
Both candidates gushed a slew of praise and gratitude, eyes lit up like stage lights. Zimmer simply waved a hoof, chuckled under his breath, thanking the pair in turn. Octavia's newfound joy was enough to even stop her casual jibes at Lyra, and she could only assume a similar happiness was preventing any insults coming from the unicorn herself.